YouTube live feed is going. And the last thing we got to do is get our Facebook live feed. And Facebook is always the funny one. Takes a little longer to get it moving, but when it's up, it's up. Yeah, it wants me to do all this stuff. Give it a title and
For sure.
yeah.
Oh, that
But,
old tech.
oh yeah, man. I was having this conversation with my wife. I said, honey, I did my first Instagram reel.
Ooh,
And she's like,
yep.
what? I said, yeah, it only took me 45 minutes to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know much about social. My wife is sort of the one who deals with that stuff. So yeah, I mean, most of my stuff, I just like dealing in person, face to face. But I'm sure there's stuff on the social end that will probably boost my stuff, but I just don't know much about it.
No, man, you're like I think most of us in that we kind of want to do what we do best and like share out that piece with somebody else that knows a little bit more. So I got you, man. Well, we are officially live, Josh, and I want to just kind of tell you out of the gate, absolutely appreciate your time, and welcome to our show. Wealth through wholesaling is something that we put together as a opportunity for newbie wholesalers who kind of want to know a little bit more about the game and how to play the game, an opportunity to hear from other people who have engaged and who've done some deals. And it was twofold. It gave us an opportunity to free our time up because instead of us taking phone calls, we just shoot them to our YouTube channel. And then at the same time, we got a chance to learn some tips and tricks that we might not be applying in our business.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a pretty good deal for us. So again, man, I appreciate your Saturday. I do not take it for granted. And man, let's kick it, shall we?
We shall.
All right, man. Hey, so if you could start us off by just telling us, how did you meet this adorable woman? Because it seems like that is a killer part of being successful in business, having a support system.
Yeah. So so now are you talking about my wife?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we met in Amway, oddly enough. Selling some soap. But yeah, I mean, direct marketing. I mean, it gets a bad rap a lot. And it wasn't necessarily for me, but I will say it was a source of some significant personal growth for me. I mean, I think I read probably like 100 and some books on personal growth, leadership, personality, stuff like that. So yeah, we met through a mutual friend through that. And so yeah, that's kind of what got that ball rolling. But yeah,
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful, man. So tell us a little bit about your entrepreneur journey. You talked about Amway, and I was like, yeah, we have connected. Our aunt was a big Amway person, and it was cool because in college I got involved with some direct marketing, and I mean I love the industry. And like you, man, you go through so much personal growth to be a part of that industry. You get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's kind of one of those industries where there's you're able to essentially be an entrepreneur and be able to kind of flex some of those muscles, be able to kind of learn that. I think the reason why it's also tough is because you're also dealing with people who don't exactly know what they're doing, and so the company or the whatever product you represent can sometimes get a bad rap because you don't have a ton of control over the people who are representing that, and some people kind of do it the wrong way. Obviously in business you always can, any industry, even wholesaling and real estate, you can do stuff in a shady way that sort of gets you a bad name, and if there's enough of that going on, you can, a lot of it can. But yeah, no, it's I I really enjoyed that time, learned a ton through it. Have several friends who are still doing it, who are fairly successful. Have gotten to the point of being financially free and stuff, but it wasn't really for me. Fell in love with the real estate game and kind of
Mhm.
never back. So
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, well, I'm gonna kick the next question over to Lewis.
Well, looking into it, tell me what your intention is. Like, what was your driving force after all this? I know we talked about Amway, but like, what got you into this? What made you want to be an entrepreneur?
yeah, I think for me, entrepreneurship, like I don't know, it's obviously when you're talking to other entrepreneurs, they kind of get it, but it's like you have this sort of thing deep inside you where you want something that's yours. You never really quite gelled with being told what to do or how to do it. You kind of have this sort of slant where you want to kind of create something. And I think from an intent standpoint, I'd say it's probably twofold for me. Um, I love being able to create and to build something. I think the idea of building a legacy and building wealth and all that stuff. There's a significant draw for me because I just love the aspect of creation. I love that journey. So really, in the doing, like that is part of the reason why I do it. I enjoy doing it, and I'd say the other part of it is, we're big family people, my wife and I. So I love. We have three young kids. Noah's 9. Charlie just turned 7. Yeah, 7. And my youngest is 5. And so
Ooh,
yeah,
man.
honestly, just creating time to be able to create memories with them. We're big campers, so we have a 30 plus foot travel trailer that we tow with a Suburban, and we'll go to different state parks and different campgrounds. And we have a 2 or 3 month trip planned for this fall where we're gonna go up and down the East Coast. And so I mean all that stuff, it costs money. And so I think that's one of my other intentions for real estate and really for creating wealth, is just to be able to make memories with our kids and spend time with them. And so yep, so that's my intention.
So I'm not trying to overlook this, but so you put yourself in a position where you're able to take 3 months off of work.
Oh yeah, well, I mean the real estate game, you're never off, but that's the great thing about virtually wholesaling, is that you can do it anywhere. And it was funny, we at the very beginning of the camping season, we'll take a 2-nighter some place locally just to really make sure that the camper isn't working, nothing's going to blow up or whatever before we hit the road and go hours and hours out. So we did that, and we were kind of talking to somebody about internet, because that's a big thing with camping. A lot of times you're in some pretty remote areas. And so we looked into the that Starlink, that Elon Musk is getting up and running with the satellites, creating Wi-Fi. So I signed up for that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, when you're on the road, I mean, outside of just making sure you have Wi-Fi and cell service, I mean, that's all it really requires to be able to have a mobile office rolling around. So my wife's in real estate too. So I mean, we both, most of our stuff we just can kind of do wherever we're at. So it doesn't really matter.
Amazing, amazing. When you were telling me earlier in the week that you were on the campsite, I got really, really. I was digging it back to my father. My father is the one who kind of set the legacy up for us in real estate, but that was his deal. He would take us camping every summer, and you know what? As a kid, it was like a pain because I remember, oh man, I gotta be away from my friends. But like as an adult, man, such awesome memories, man. And hats off to you, man, because I'm sure your kids are gonna feel the same way. All right, so
That's it.
so let's get into the brass bolts here. So the ironic thing is, I'm in New York. I wholesale virtually in Atlanta. You're in Maryland, am I right?
Yep.
and you're wholesaling. So I didn't actually know how to basically do virtual wholesaling correctly until I had some formal paid education mentorship. So tell me a little bit about your educational journey. How did you put all the pieces together so that you could successfully put the pieces in the right places?
Yeah, so that's been sort of a long process for me. I mean, up till probably about a year ago, I'd say, I didn't quite have all the pieces together. It's kind of the best way I've kind of found the wholesaling journey is really kind of like you're building a plane while flying it, or it's just you have all these different puzzle pieces and all these different things. It's kind of a complex process. I mean, it appears at first glance like a very simple system, and I would say that it is, but each of those components of the wholesale process, like you have to gain mastery over and you have to learn it, just like anything else in life. You have to like understand it, and that takes time and it takes work. And so my into the real estate industry was through a friend named Brad. He had a coaching system. I paid, I think it was like 12 grand for it, which I probably could have gotten the same thing for much less expensive, but hey, it got me into the real estate game. It's
Mhm.
fine. I've more than long since paid that off and made a lot more. So anyways, I'm not sweating that, but so that kind of got me started. I had a little bit of coaching, so just kind of ask questions. It's just I was new to real estate, so all this, like a bunch of the terminology, I didn't know. I just didn't know what I was doing, and so I just kind of threw myself in. I just started taking action. I started just like pulling levers and pushing buttons, just kind of figuring out what in the world works here and what's going on. And I came from a sales background, so the sales aspect of it made sense to me. I
Right.
just didn't understand much anything else. So my first year, I did, I believe, 7 deals, which I was proud of. It's that's kind of one of those things where half the time I didn't really know what I was doing. You're just finding a buyer, and you're finding this property, and I had no clue if it was a good deal or not. I just, figured it out, hey, wow, and I just made like this amount of money. And so yeah, I mean, I know before that first deal happens, you don't really know that it's real, it doesn't feel real. And I
Right.
remember that night where I made it was like a $20,000 spread on a transaction. And I remember the night that hit our bank account, and like my wife and I were just like, huh, it actually worked. It's like
Right.
you don't even believe it until the money's actually in your account. And you're looking at it, you're like, oh man, it can't be real.
Proof
But
of concept, right? Proof of concept.
yeah, so it just, and then after that, like I just kind of figured out it's you're really just working with buyers and sellers, and a lot of times facilitating a handshake and putting together a deal. Back to the puzzle piece thing, it's you're constantly like connecting dots, and you just have to get a bunch of dots and figure out which ones are good connections and connect them. So that's kind
All
of what
right.
I.
So say more about your first deal, because many people in our audience, they're driving for dollars, they're skip tracing, but some of them haven't even gotten their first deal yet.
Yeah.
So say more about your first deal.
Yep. So my first deal, I was paying, I think it was like $200 a month for. It was called Freedom Soft. It's essentially a platform for text blasting and CRM. I know there's a lot out there,
Mhm.
and so I bought a list off of what was it? Just one of the list things. List source. Oh yeah, list source.
Yeah.
But yeah, purchased a list off that, text blasted it, and went through like a bunch of different people who were and weren't interested. And this guy named Kevin had a house. It was left to him from his parents. So went out there, took a look at the property, brought my contract with me, negotiated him down to, you know, his lowest number. I didn't even know still how to do the numbers, but I just figured, hey, it sounds low. Let's see if we can sell this.
Hmm.
And so I showed like 20 people the property. I was this close to kind of just giving up on it, and just thinking like, I got it under contract at the wrong price. I mean, Everybody was telling me, look, it's a slim deal, stuff like that. And it probably was. And I finally got in touch with another wholesaler who said, oh, I have somebody buying in that area. He talked to him, helped me sell it, and I
Mhm.
made 4,000 on it. I think he made 5,000 in helping me sell it. And
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't glamorous. I didn't really know what I was doing, but that was my first 4,000. And then after that,
Beautiful.
I sold a package deal of 2 properties to a hedge fund buyer, and then boom, it was off
Got
the
it.
races after that. But yeah, that was my first deal, was the 4,000 one.
So Josh, let me unpack for our audience a little bit, because I think what you said, a lot of key things that many people may not, totally catch the first time. So the first thing was this: Josh squatted up. He found a distressed property. He didn't have a buyer, but he had enough wherewithal to, maybe through a networking opportunity, connect with another wholesaler who had a cash buyer. And as opposed to losing the deal altogether, there was we call it time over money. You can keep all of your assignment, or you can get the deal sold by squadding up with another wholesaler. Killer move. And I'm not even sure if you were conscious of it, but that's the game.
Yeah, not at the time. I really didn't. I didn't understand what I was doing. It's funny now because I do a lot of that, but whereas I'm the other person who's helping the new guy get the deal
Right.
done.
You're bringing the buyer.
So somewhere
Absolutely.
in sales, we always had a funny terminology where it's like, hey, you can make 100% of nothing, or you can make 50% of something that sells. So it's something that doesn't get sold. There's no monetary value in it. It doesn't matter if you're 100% on it. If it doesn't get sold, you didn't make any money.
Mhm.
So it's always a smart plan, to, if you can't move something, get help. Yeah. I mean, there's
Right.
there's plenty of people out there who have niche networks of niche buyers. I'm not the end all be all in the market. I have some great buyers, but some deals aren't right for them. Whereas maybe another wholesaler has a buyer that it is right for. And so, in this business, I'm about getting a transaction done. And if
Right.
that means I partner with somebody else and I make 50% on it, great, man. Everybody wins when, you squad up, team up, work with other people. And JVing is also great because you get to team up with other people who are different from you. They have different trade secrets, different stuff. Like, it's all relationships. So I mean,
Absolutely.
you make relationships with other people and you learn a ton in the process. So it's a good deal.
Absolutely. So Josh, when you and I first talked on the phone, man, I was totally digging your vibe. And I'm like, this is a guy that I'm definitely going to do business with, just because you had the right spirit, the right energy. And so, here we are.
Well, yeah,
Um,
really, really fast. Like, I mean, and this comes down to like figuring out what you're good at and what your strengths are. And it's
mhm.
different for everybody. And you have those people who like, they're kind of like trolls. They don't have great personalities, very rough around the edges, but maybe they're great at hammering the phone and cold calling a million people. I can't stand that. Like, I'd rather die.
Mhm.
But I'm a relational person. I love other people. I love relationships. So I figured out it's like, well, I'm going to play to my strengths. I'm going to go out, meet people, network, and continue to network. And eventually, like, I find people who are on the acquisition side. I find people on the buyer side, and so boom, I work dispositions and make money that way. And then eventually, so it's like you get other people to do the things you don't want to do.
Mhm.
And man, I can't stand acquisitions. I'm telling you what,
Yeah,
like,
I hear you. By the way,
but
I updated my inventory recently, so check your email.
yeah, no, for sure, man. And some people love it. And that's the thing. It's like that everybody's different. Some people love doing construction. I can't stand it. I hate manual labor.
Right.
But shoot, man, like I get to do what I love, which is meeting other people and adding value. And that's great. So that's what I play to. I play to my strengths. But whereas the next person, you may not be good at that part. You may be good at this other part of the process. So yeah, double down on that. Get good at that, and then see how you can add value to somebody else who's different from you. Well, talk to me. I'd love to. If you're great at acquisitions, I'm horrible at it. So hey, come and talk to me.
So, Josh, before I kick it over to Lewis, the other thing I want to unpack for our viewership is this. Guys, I think it's really important, guys, that um, you can fail forward in this business of real estate, specifically wholesaling. But if you can condense your time frame by getting into a mentorship, it will greatly enhance the number of potholes you can avoid.
Man,
And Josh did just that.
that's it. That's it. I soapbox about this all the time, Earl. Like JV, JV, JV. When you are new, there's a couple different options you have. You can essentially try to go it alone, learn everything on your own, and it will literally take you years, because that's exactly what I did. So it'll take you years. But when you JV, like, it's almost like you're kind of like putting yourself in a paid internship where
Mhm.
you get to learn from somebody who has a lot more experience, who knows what they're doing, and you're a part of the process. Now, you won't make the full percentage on the transaction,
Right.
but it's you're getting education essentially for free. So heck yeah, I'll take 10% of a transaction if I could learn from somebody who's taking care of the rest of the other 90%. And that's the thing in this business, is that, like, when you work with somebody else who actually knows what they're doing, and not only that, like, they have a vested interest in getting a deal done. So you've essentially put yourself in a position to where they're incentivized to help you, because it's adding value to them. And that's something you'll find out when people say, hey, go find a mentor and stuff like that. You're either going to pay a lot of money for mentorship, especially from somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Because people who know what they're doing, like, they could go out there and make 10 to 15,000 on a transaction, and they want to help people. But when you're new, there's so much to learn. You have to you have to add value to somebody, or they just, I don't have the time to go out there and help every single new wholesaler, even though I want to. Like, in my heart, you probably can identify with this, Earl. Like, in my
Mhm.
heart, I love to go out there and help every single new person, because I know how hard it was, but I don't have the time, and I can't work for free right now in my life. I wish I could right now, but I can't. I got to make money. And so for the people who need help and are looking for a mentor, go with hands open, where, like, you're just like, what do you need? What can I do to add value? Can I hustle? Can I make phone calls? Can I drive for dollars? Can I do some, just add value to them, and they'll be incentivized to help you and train you. So
Absolutely. So I see a couple comments in our live. One person is love adding value. That's the key. Now this is an interesting question. Josh, how did you find your hedge fund buyer?
So that one was through a title company, and the not really just the title company, but the business. What was he doing? He was business development. So he was working business development. He was networking, making connections. I showed up to a lot of their networking events, got to be friends with him, and he had an out of state hedge fund buyer who was looking to buy. This was in Maryland when I was working up there, and he was looking to buy in that area. They had put together a fund where investors had put money in. If you're new to the hedge fund terminology, it's essentially a pool of investors putting their funds into a fund that this hedge fund manager, whoever takes care of that fund, will distribute those funds into whatever the hedge fund's for. In this case, it would be real estate. So they were purchasing property. So I got to know the acquisitions person for this hedge fund, and yeah, met him through this business development guy for this title company. And for him, if he makes connections with us and we get more deals done, well, that's more that his title company would be able to close. So he was incentivized to facilitate a handshake. So that's how I met him.
Yes. You play to your strengths.
That's it. It was all network.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you got it, Lewis.
All right, because I'm not an entrepreneur myself. You two guys are the experts in this. I'm more looking at it from a W-2 standpoint. So I know it's really stressful going to job every day. What do you do for your mental health for this? Like, is this not as stressful as a regular job? Do you have some sort of outreach? Is this, because I know you play to your strengths, do you put yourself in a spot where it's almost soothing to do your job? Like, I'm curious where you at there.
Gosh, dude, that with what's going on with COVID and stuff, that question is more well placed than you would know. Um, during the COVID season, and I probably, depending on the area that you're in, depends on how crazy the state is. Maryland's one of the more crazy states. They put us on lockdown and all these like kind of things. Everybody's freaked out. Everybody's like staying away from each other, and so isolation is not great for mental health. And in my life, I've been fairly mentally healthy, but this was like the first time I started dealing with depression and just getting down and not being able to get out of bed and just sort of it's rough, just kind of these downward spirals of not wanting to get up and do something, and you feel worse about yourself, so your self-talk essentially becomes this negative reinforcement that's just pushing you down further and further. And so I got a taste of what people who deal with depression go through. Probably not to the degree that some experience it, but I got to the point where it's like I have to get up and do something. I have, it's like I have to be able to kind of create meaning, and so yeah, I'd say like real estate was really that for me. It was a way that I could do something I enjoyed, but it helped with my own mental health. And so yeah, so that's a very important thing for a lot of people right now with the COVID, like, that maybe they got laid off from their jobs. And it's funny, like you wouldn't think that a job would add such meaning to a person's life, but it's pretty significant. And so, so yeah, I got laid off from a job. I wasn't full-time in wholesaling yet at that point. And I was kind of transitioning that way, but still getting fired from the job when COVID started, and going full-time into real estate. It was cool on the one hand, but I mean, it messed with me mentally for sure. Just figuring out like, okay, who am I? What do I do? What's this whole life thing about? When you have something so large like that, it's like 40 hours of your life a week that you're putting into something. When that gets removed and there's a lot of empty space there, it's hard. You kind of have to kind of get back to the point where you really kind of, gain back that mental health and figure out, okay, who am I? What am I doing? So yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but for me, taking action is the main thing that keeps me mentally healthy. I find that when like I'm not doing anything, it's when those voices inside are nagging at me, telling me all kinds of crap that I don't need to hear. So yeah. So
it kind of gave you drive. It gave you a goal to focus on. Yes.
Well, like it kind of showed me what happens when you don't. So in a way, it did create drive, but more so, the drive was created because it showed me what happens when there is none. And I didn't want that anymore. So yeah, I think everybody wants to feel good inside. They want to feel like they're on purpose or like they have meaning. And it's not that work is the ultimate thing that gives you meaning in life. My relationship with Jesus is something that does that for me from a spiritual standpoint. But in life in general, as far as like work, especially as men, we desire to create something, to do something, to achieve. It's something that's hardwired in us. Right or wrong, you can try to deny it or not, but the evidence is there where it's like we're supposed to do something with our lives. And so yeah, you figure out what you love and what you want to do, and then you go do it. and when you're doing nothing, it's rough on the psyche. It's no good, no bueno. So
Excellent question, Lewis. All right, Josh, I got another question from our live. It's they want to know, tell us about your team. Now, are you a one-person show? Or have you been able to scale up?
So right now, my team, so that's kind of been in flux a little bit. I sort of created an in-house acquisitions team that was going to be doing cold calling, stuff like that. And what I figured out, part of what we were talking about failing forward, I figured out that I'm not a super great manager. I don't do well with people who need to be managed. I deal much better with people who have self-initiative and their own drive. I don't babysit well. I don't stay on people and make sure that they're getting their work done. It wasn't something I was good at. So the acquisition side, like having a team to manage, nothing was happening because I wasn't managing it. I wasn't pushing it forward. And I'm not looking for another job, right? So I ended up figuring out that that was not my bag. I disbanded my acquisitions team, and I really kind of more so focused on external outsourced acquisitions. That happens a few different ways for me. Sometimes it's other wholesalers, whether established or newer. There's some bird dogs who do a lot of canvassing neighborhoods, driving for dollars, finding stuff. And in turn, I kind of help train them a little bit on the process. And eventually they'll probably be a standalone wholesaler. But right now, while they're learning, they're just out there trying to find direct to seller leads for me to work. And so that's been essentially my acquisitions game plan. But so I moved more from an in-house acquisitions to where now I outsource it. So
Okay, so it sounds like you have I call it a street team where you may have a couple people who are actively driving for dollars, looking for distressed property. Is that close to being?
yep.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and not only that, I have some buyers who have areas they typically like to work, but
Mhm.
they don't have the time to talk to the seller, get it under contract. And so a lot of times what they'll do is when they're driving by places, they'll shoot them over to me. I'll have one of the guys, bird dogs or people that I work with, I'll have them call the seller, see if they're interested in selling. And then we start negotiating the price and see if we can't get a deal. And in those cases, it's kind of nice because you already have the buyer already in place. So you're just reverse engineering it to where, you know, you're then just trying to get the property under contract at the price where you have the spread in there with the buyer who's already pretty much given you their price of what they want to pay on it. So yeah, so that part's a little bit different, but it's all acquisitions. So
Okay. Now, Josh, you may have answered this already, but I'm seeing in one of the other comments, specifically, what adjustments did you make as a result of the pandemic? Yeah, I know you talked about it a little bit already.
man, that is also a great question. So this is where I pat myself on the back, and I really kind of like this is where something I did actually worked, right? The acquisition team thing that did not work, and so I lost a few $100s. It wasn't horrible, but and a lot of time building that. But with COVID, I figured out that in-person networking was not that was my bread and butter, right? Like meeting people in person, happy hours, whatever way I was able to like talk to other people and be able to make relationships.
Mhm.
That was what I was good at. And then when COVID hit, honestly, like I think that's where the whole depression thing kind of set in because it literally took away my the only way that I was generating money was by networking, and it took it out of the game. I couldn't network. I'm like, what in the world? Like, how does that happen?
Mhm.
So I had to adjust, and I'd love to say that like I got knocked on my butt for a few days, and then like I figured, like okay, how do I work my way around this? Have you guys heard of that book, "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan
No,
Holiday? So
obstacles
write
away.
that down. I know we'll probably talk about book recommendations and stuff, but the obstacle is the way. It essentially like talks about how when we're faced with obstacles in life, the obstacle is the way through it, like going straight through the obstacle. And a lot of times obstacles can push us to either run or try to kind of just like make a parallel move, but a lot of times you just have to hit it head on. So anyways, I digress. But with COVID, like now that it took away my main means of of doing deals, I had to figure that out. So what I did was I hired a VA. They do outbound Facebook marketing. Funny enough, Earl, that was who touched base with you. So she's a Filipino girl. Her name's Michaela. Sweetest person you've ever met. She's a student in college over there in the Philippines, and so she logs into my Facebook account. She shoots out Facebook messages on the Atlanta wholesaling websites,
Mhm.
and she pretty much says, "Hey, how you doing? You working in real estate? What are you doing in real estate?" Like,
I
and
think
so
that's cute, yeah.
yeah, I've kind of trained her to like kind of be like, "Hey, these are the type of people I'm looking for," and she'll just essentially reach out to people, make connections, and then when if it's somebody that I'm kind of looking to talk to, she'll schedule an appointment, and then I'll get on the phone with them and I'll get a chance to meet them. And so that's essentially how I got around the whole lack of in-person networking. I pay her $100 a week to daily work, essentially set up phone conversations for me. I talked about 5 to 8 people a day, and I get to network. And it's a bigger pain in the butt. I used to love to just go into a room where there's 50 people hanging out and getting the chance to just mingle and talk to tons of people. That's not a thing right now, or at least it isn't up in our area. So I have to talk to people individually one at a time. And so I pay somebody to do that for me.
Nice, nice. I'm excited because now I have another source of when I'm ready to scale back up. Yes, for sure, for sure. All right, I don't see any comments in our links. Go ahead, Lewis, jump in.
So speaking of things and great ideas, tell me something you think is extremely underrated. Could be in wholesale, could be something in your life, something you've seen. Just
That's a good question, man. I don't know. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but I would just go right back to the talking to people. I know, if you're familiar with Brent Daniels, TTP, I mean, he kind of hits the nail on the head, and it's funny, like you can be told something and not fully understand it, but when you're talking to people day in and day out, like I'm the type person where if if there's information or something that's not present, like you don't see it, you see everything else that's there, but then there's something that's not there. I am horrible about figuring out what's absent from whatever, and so you don't know what you don't know, right? But so when somebody tells you something and you don't have a means to like kind of really truly understand it. Well, the talking to people thing, I just started talking to people, and eventually like I'm very good at problem solving with information that's present. So when I started talking to just a bunch of different people, you never really know who you're going to talk to. So I got less, um, I got less feeling like I needed to figure out the outcome, and I just kind of backed off that and just started talking to people and letting whatever happen. And that was a game changer for me because I figured out like, hey, look, I'm just going to go talk to people. I don't know who they are. I don't know what I do. I have general parameters for that. But within that, I just talk to them and I see, hey, what is it that you do? How can we find win-wins here? And they'll say what they do. I'll tell them what I do. And then we'll literally like talk on the phone and figure out, okay, so with what you do and what I do, how can we both win? What are things that we can do that are both going to be adding value for us? And I say, hey, I feel like I can add value to you this way. And they're like, well, yeah, I think I could add value back in this way. And it's a conversation. So when I talk to 5 to 8 people every day, it's literally like you're having tons of conversations of figuring out what win-wins are. And eventually what happens is that stuff comes full circle and you're finding you're connecting dots all over the place. Oh shoot, this person had this property. Oh wait, I talked to this buyer, they needed this exact type of property. Boom, there's a deal done. It's like, hey, this person, this high-end buyer needs an in-house private lender, or this mortgage lender for their office. Well, I talked to a private lender the other day. Boom, like another relationship that adds value. And I think he's going to pay me per transaction or something. I don't know. But regardless of whether I get paid or not, like when you're making relationships better and adding value, it's so the thing that's underrated is just getting out there and talking to people and not deciding the outcome of what that conversation should be, but letting that essentially just happen on its own.
Mhm.
You don't dictate that.
So to sum it up, like open-minded networking, yeah?
Pretty much, man.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm not going to tell you what you're going to solve for me. You tell me, like, what is it that you do? Okay. All right. And then you just problem solve. It's just problems. It's solving puzzles.
Mhm.
So you get to kind of but you can't solve a puzzle if you don't have the puzzle pieces. So just go out and get some puzzle pieces. You don't have to know how they fit together at first. Just go get them. And if you're smart, semi-smart person at least, you'll figure it out. I mean, a lot of that stuff just is shining in your face. You just gotta put the pieces together. So
I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Dad.
All right. So I'm looking in our comment section, and this was actually a question that I have for you as well. So it's interesting. So someone asked, what does your KPIs look like? And it's funny because I was just running through my KPIs and saying, okay, so this makes a ton of sense. So I got to do this much to get a deal. I got to do this much of this to get a different deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so mine, I'm not super structured. Like, it's just not my style. My general KPIs are just how many conversations I'm having a day. I work off of sort of a kind of like a war room, like kind of board. It's essentially a Google Doc spreadsheet, and I have it kind of laid out to where I can put what things are contracted that we're working on, what things we're marketing to buyers, what still needs to be contracted, things that are in the title process that are working through that process. That's something that just kind of keeps me on point. But I don't run a ton of KPIs. Our typical goal for deals is 3 to 5 deals a month. We've been pretty much hitting that. I should probably increase that goal, but I don't know. I'm just still building traction. I'm a little bit newer to the Atlanta market, so I'm just kind of like liking the stability and the of kind of getting that amount of deals done. So yeah, but the KPIs for me just kind of come back to, as long as I'm talking to at least about 5 people a day, we're on track for that 3 to 5 deals a month. So
the 5 conversations you're having a day, are they typically with wholesalers, buyers, or some combination of each?
it's a mix. Yep.
Mix. Okay.
It's a total mix. This hasn't really happened up until this point, but if, let's say,
My internet is freezing up. Okay, hang on. Internet is in question. Let's see what's going on here. See if we can. How we doing? All right, it looks like that's gonna be a wrap. Our internet is not cooperating, but we had an amazing conversation. All right, so Instagram.